Hello, Dennis. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. I'm excited.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. I've never gotten a chance to speak to you, so this is exciting for me.
Oh, good.
And then the new book just came out yesterday. I happened to get it just yesterday morning. Snakes, Guillotines, Electric Chairs, My Adventures in the Alice Cooper Group. It's like 300 pages. I haven't read the whole thing, but I've basically skipped everything I was supposed to do yesterday to get through as much of it as I could.
Good for you. You get a gold star.
It's some really great stories, and what blows my mind, I've interviewed a lot of 60s and 70s rock stars that don't remember a lot of details, you know?
I think it runs in my family. My dad used to, around the campfire in Arizona and Oregon, he'd have all these tall tales to tell, and as it turned out, he wasn't making them up, because then when my uncles would get together with him, the tales would be exactly the same, and so he had a good memory.
Well, that's what I love about the book, because you get down to details that, you know, I mean, like certain things that certain people said, they're not necessarily important details, but all the details in the book really make the story just really that much better.
Well, I was an introvert back then. I was very quiet unless we were in the rehearsal room. There I was the loud crusader, but outside of that, I was in deep thought and an observer, because I was always an artist. In grade school, kids didn't even know my name. They called me the artist. And when the Alice Cooper Group would be traveling around, all of us in a station wagon, if somebody said something that I thought was interesting, I'd jot it down on a piece of paper and toss it in my suitcase, and at the end of the tour I'd have a ton of notes in my suitcase. But I think that had to do with it. Just the fact of writing it down helped etch it in my memory as well.
And it's amazing that you saved all that stuff over the years.
I know. It is really. It's I sound like a hoarder, but it's mostly just because I never find the time to go through stuff and throw anything out.
Let's go way back to the beginning real fast. Of course, you and Vincent, or Alice, basically started the band, right?
Yes, in high school we were like 16 years old.
And how did everything start? You guys was there certain bands that you guys were into that you decided, we have to do this?
Oh yeah, I mean, back then, what was happening on the radio, Alice was always into being the guy that knew, what was going on, the hip kid of the school. And so, Surfing Safari with the Beach Boys, or Jackie Wilson would be on, doing this dance that was amazing on American Bandstand, which Michael Jackson tipped his hat to as an influence. But all that kind of stuff we were very hip about, and what the latest James Bond film was. But then I saw Dwayne Eddy and the Rebels play live between a double feature at the movie theater. I said, wow, that's what I want to do. And then the Beatles came out, and that blew the lid off of everything. It's like somebody turned on a light. And Alice and I decided that we would start a band. Even though we didn't know how to play any instruments, we started a band, and that was it for us. As soon as we were on stage, we knew, we had no other choice. We had to be in a band.
I would have loved to have been there just to see the looks on people's faces, because, we've got Marilyn Manson, we've got Kiss, we've got all these bands that try to be shock rockers, but they all came after you guys. I mean, nobody had ever done this before.
Right, and we did have the advantage of, back in our era, the censors were so strong that you couldn't get away with much. So we pushed the boundaries, but we had to be careful not to go too far across the line, because then they would censor us. So you could be shocking then, because previous to us, you weren't allowed to do much of anything. I mean, even the Beatles got criticized for the length of their hair when they first came out. And if you look back at those early album covers, their hair wasn't long at all. So we had that advantage. These days you're going up against movies and video games that have so many shocking things that it has raised the bar to the point where it's hard to shock people anymore.
Right. And that, that was the time that, like you said, the Beatles and the Beach Boys, and you guys really put the nail in the coffin of the hippie generation in the 60s and the Summer of Love, and really ushered in a whole new kind of music.
Well, the timing was on our side there. Like Alice says, we were the band that drove the stake through the heart of the hippie generation, but they were imploding then. All of the peace, love people were kind of trading in their ideals for, where to get their next drugs. And it wasn't what it was intended to be. Things had changed. Vietnam War and all of the things that were going on in the country at that time. It was time for a change. So they were ready. It's just that they didn't expect us to step in.
And with the stage show, that must have just blown people away. What was, I know they've added a lot, every tour has been a little bit different, but what was like the original stage show like when you guys first started doing stuff like that? Was there snakes? Was there guillotines? Was there electric chairs all at the beginning?
The very first show that Vince and I did with Glenn Bucks and Vince as Alice Cooper. I mean, he wasn't Alice Cooper then, but Vince Fournier and I, high school kids, and Glenn Buxton and our other two friends, John Tatum, John Spear, we played the Halloween dance at Cortez High School in 1964, and we had a guillotine, we had spider webs, we had coffins and tombstones, and that stuck, So later on, we kind of revisited as I thought of this idea of when we had the Alice Cooper character, okay, what can this Alice Cooper character do that people will remember? And we were into being theatrical, so I thought an execution. So the band wasn't going for it, so I decided I'd go out in the garage and build an electric chair with flashing lights and everything so they could see how cool it would be. And so we incorporated that into the show, and then when we could afford it, the natural progression was gallows, and then after that was the guillotine. So it all just fell into place step by step, really.
That's great. Dennis, I could sit here and I could talk to you all day long about this, and I would love to, but I know that you've got other things to do and you got to run. So I want everybody to go out and get the book, Snakes, Guillotines, Electric Chairs, My Adventures in the Alice Cooper Group. It was out yesterday, right?
Out yesterday. Big smashing launch in New York City last night. It's available everywhere that books are available.
Sure. All right. Dennis Dunaway, co-writer of some of Alice Cooper's most memorable songs, and, of course, the original bass player and founding member. Great to talk to you today, Dennis. I hope we get to speak again sometime.
Thanks, Willie. I enjoyed it.